that's what I've decided to do for now, at the very least. I was listening to get into the content. Why are we here? I was listening to the Civic Saturday delivery. It's kind of like a sermon, like a non-religious, but if you think about our civic reality as something to organize around, talk about, discuss, honor, lean into, reflect on, which if you're not doing that, you're missing the mark as a steward of community and the shared civic reality we all have in this society. If you are a citizen of whatever your nation is, and it's a democracy or representative situation of some sort, well, you have an agency and a responsibility to reflect on these things and consider what is your role and should you show up or change how you show up in community. How do you define community? All these things. We got to think about and talk about these things if we want to have a healthy self-governance situation. Because right now, if you have noticed, all right, I'm not even going to say it, you've noticed that we do not in the United States have a healthy self-governance situation right now. We have a hot mess. And that's not a unique story to us. Many nations have a hot mess going on. During this convening, I think it was from November, but it's available online from Civic, Nebraska, Civic, Nebraska. So they host every now and again something called a Civic Saturday, where they've got different deliveries. So they've got some free sort of fellowship time. They've got maybe some kind of song. They've got some kind of civic scripture, which what I'm going to share right here is one of them. It's by James Baldwin. It's called A Talk to Teachers. And then they also have a civic sermon, which was delivered in this case by Steve Smith. And he's been involved in the Civic University ecosystem, which really pushed and promoted this idea of a Civic Saturday, a civic sermon, a coming together as community locally, but also streaming, which is why I can benefit from this goodness months after the fact here. He's been part of that for, I guess, 6 years now, and recently has been stepped into a chief communications officer role nationally with whatever the Citizen University is up to. So I said, what is this guy about? What's going on here? And his talk was good. I got some notes from it. I might go into those. But what really spoke to me was this message that James Baldwin delivered. Who shared this? What was their name? This was read by Astrid Munn. The following was delivered by Astrid Munn to Civic Nebraska audience. So I'm just going to share what they shared and what I have to branch off and say along the way. I'm trying to put my thoughts together on the end, so we'll see where we go there. I'm gonna get myself in this third frame back here. A Talk to Teachers. James Baldwin, 1963. As an aside, James Baldwin, his background. James Baldwin was an American novelist, essayist, and social critic whose searing honesty about race, morality, and identity reshaped 20th century public discourse and demanded that America confront the gap between its ideals and its realities. In this address to New York City school teachers, Baldwin urges educators to face historical truth, resist comforting myths, and prepare the next generation to live as conscious, moral actors in a turbulent democracy. So I'll begin from his delivery. Let's begin by saying that we are living through a very dangerous time. Everyone in this room is in one way or another aware of that. We are in a revolutionary situation, no matter how unpopular the word has become in this country. The society in which we live is desperately menaced, not by Khrushchev, or I'll add Gabe's words, Putin or Trump, or fill in your idea of a menace to society. Not by them, Republican, Democrat, whomever. Not by them, but from within. I'll repeat that. The society in which we live is desperately menaced, not by Khrushchev, but from within. To any citizen of this country who figures themselves as responsible, and particularly those of you who deal with the minds and hearts of children, I ask you to examine the situation with honesty. On the side, Gabe wonders here, where might you start? What does it mean to examine, to look, to ask questions? Back to Baldwin. The question before us is whether we want to be dealers in hope or in truth. There is, of course, without question, a place for hope, as there is a place for love and for faith. But none of these is a substitute for the hard work of seeing and reporting the facts, of understanding the structures of power and the meaning of freedom, or of examining the infinite complexity of each human life. One of the immense uses of our schools is to help children deal with the burden of history. Not just the dates and the names, but the living consequences of the past and the moral responsibility of the present. The students you teach are not simply future citizens. They are living now in a world saturated with illusions of color, of class, of power. And they often sense, better than we adults do, the inconsistencies, between what is taught and what is lived. If they grow up believing that the past is safe or fixed or simply to be memorized, they will never be ready to grapple with the duplicities of the present. If they grow up believing, I'm gonna pause here, take a bio break, wait for this this furnace to finish its blowing, and repeat that, because this is rich. Okay, where did we leave off? Let's pick it up. Maybe a lighting change because the TV turned off here. So we'll deal with it. Talking about the kids. If they grow up believing that the past is safe or fixed or simply to be memorized, they will never be ready to grapple with the duplicities of the present. If they are not taught how to critique the stories they are told, they will become incapable of critique at all. What the schools must teach is not only what is right and what is wrong, but how to ask the question, who says so? Why? What aim? And to whose benefit? Without this training, the very idea of freedom becomes an empty formula. A child may learn how to get ahead in society, but if that means learning how to comply, how to accept half-truths, how to disguise his real feelings and hide his real selves, then freedom will evade him and democracy will be shallow. We have turned the minds of our children into counting machines, test-taking machines, production machines. But what we cannot afford is to turn them into belief machines. So Gabe's thoughts right now. I do have 2 more paragraphs to go back to of his, but Gabe's thoughts here. Who cannot afford? What sad economic and educational system would say this? Oh, we can't afford for our kids to grow up into belief machines. We've got to train them, to drill them for the input-output. Take orders, execute. Go to work, get the job done. What's the job? Whatever they say the job is. I'm just following orders. I just work here. And no wonder we look around and we're quiet quitting or loudly quitting, raging against the machine, and if we're not, we're dreaming about quitting. Most. It doesn't have to be this way. It doesn't have to be this way. We created this. People created this. I was thinking about critique. This is still Gabe talking. Critique as a way of engaging with the civic environment. Like an interactive story. You push here. What happens? You pull there. What do we find? Open this door. What's behind it? Ask the question, what do you discover? Co-create something beautiful. And then talk about it. How did it come to be? Think about it. What else might be possible through working together? Who was invited? Who else could be invited? What more might be possible with their perspective and unique take on things and their energy? Even just in a pair of two. I know that my wife brings things and a perspective that I never thought of. And when we work together, we co-create, we complement. And we get done something that was otherwise impossible. The same thing is true with you and me. With you and them. And them and them. And Illinois was going through this thing when I moved to the state. It was Governor Quinn, Pat Quinn at the time, had this task force, civic education task force, assembled and put together. Was it Mark Lane who was doing it, or was he the social enterprise one? Anyway, I think he was the social enterprise. But there's this civic education task force that was put together, and they were looking at how are we doing? Because the whatever metrics they were using to quantify things were saying the Illinois was like the 11th worst state in the union in terms of civic education by whatever measurement. I think whatever we're doing for civic education is not enough, period, across the board, with maybe some rare exceptions of programs that are really leaning into the development of agency that lasts all life long, and an understanding of our responsibility in showing up outside our house. You, at the end of the day, are responsible for the trash in front of your building. Yet we put systems in place. Ideally, we've agreed on some common values and put responsibilities in place. So maybe it's technically the landlord's responsibility. Maybe it's technically streets and sanitation's responsibility, depending on where it falls. If it's inside your door and you rent, okay, maybe it's yours. But if it's right outside, maybe it's, guess I'll leave it there for someone else to deal with. We pay someone to do it, right? Yeah, sure. But, I mean, what, you want everything codified down to the last little dot? We can live in a super legalized system, massively huge government, to make sure that everyone's owning up to their obligation to each other. It sounds bloated, if you ask me. The trash is there to pick it up. You own up to it or not. Either way, it's dirty right in front of your door. You're responsible for that. We work together and we create the system to help us get the thing done and manage this whole complicated reality of living together, working together, sharing infrastructure, all that jazz. But it's like we've delegated responsibility for what's right in front of us communally, and then like placed it on someone. But just because you delegated some responsibility and have an idea that there's some fair exchange of value, you're paying taxes, so they're going to do it. By and large, yeah, okay, if that's the agreement, it should work at scale most of the time. But if it's working 80% of the time, it's working pretty good. That's at least what I figure from working in government. Can we get this to be 80% efficient? Because my God, the insanity of the bureaucracy to meet that other 20% is just, it's, I don't know, not possible from my experience. We got to have flexibility around the edges and own up to what's our local responsibility. Put it into 311. If it's a dead rat, they need to come by and pick that up. I'm not touching that. Diseases and whatnot, blah, blah, blah. But yeah, a bag of chips, come on, man. Pick that trash up. Okay, so that's my perspective on that. What else was I thinking from some of this? Liberation of our creative spirit through being comfortable with the tension of critique as a way of life, as a way of engaging with each other. Freedom will evade us, and democracy will be shallow if we learn to disguise our real feelings and hide our real selves. Hello. Talking to me. If we've just been practicing how to get ahead, get by, comply, make the system happy, and get it to reward us in the process. We're working within this paradigm, and so then we are failing to act out of our own agency, to understand that we are the co-authors of everything going on here, and to take on the responsibility that comes with that. Okay, back to Baldwin. I'm going to repeat the last paragraph I'd read. We have turned the minds of our children into counting machines, test-taking machines, production machines. But what we cannot afford is to turn them into belief machines. And yet, this is the almost tacit condition of our educational system: to produce citizens who will obey rather than question, who will adapt rather than transcend, who will accept the comfortable myth rather than live in the disturbing truth. He closes by saying, petitioning, I ask you to teach them not only how to live in the world as it is, but how to imagine the world as it might be, and how to work to make it true. I ask you to teach them not only how to live in the world as it is, but how to imagine the world as it might be, and how to work to make it true. For unless we teach the young how to refuse the false, to speak the real, to live the uneasy truth, we risk living under a tyranny of illusions. Sit with that, We risk living under a tyranny of illusions if we don't learn to refuse the false, to speak the real, to live the uneasy truth. If we don't learn how to imagine the world as it might be, and we don't learn and take action to work to make it true. This goes for the youths. Yeah, it goes for the youths. It goes for me. It goes for you. You know this. If you think about it, if you haven't thought about it, you think about it, you know this. You have agency, you have a responsibility. Well, what does it look like to act on that? It's overwhelming. We had the guy on here, what's his name? Who was doing when the new regime came in, and he was doing the video on TikTok that went viral, the song that went viral. We've got we're in the middle of a hostile government takeover, and I'd love to tell you all about it. I'd love to tell you all about it, but I'll be late for work. And it's something, we're in the middle of a hostile government takeover. Something like that. So, but I gotta get to work. I'd love to tell you about it. I gotta get to work. We can talk about it later. So, right? It's like, we gotta work, we gotta pay the bills, we gotta do all this X, Y, and Z. How am I gonna think about, reflect on my responsibility and my agency to show up in my local community, and what do I need to do to la da 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 da. Sit with that for a minute. Who benefits from you being stuck in that rat wheel? You've seen them, they put the mice on, the social media have these live feeds. I've seen them on TikTok where they're just little hamsters running on the little hamster wheel. Yeah, maybe they love it. Get the exercise. Who benefits from the masses being stuck on this wheel and not having the time, the emotional, mental capacity, as in space of peace to sit and dwell and come to a calm of all the chaos, and to reflect on and have an idea of, and then show up to what it means to be a good citizen, a good neighbor. Who benefits from us being stuck and not being able to get to that place? A place of recognizing our agency in our local community and beyond. A place of talking to each other about ideas for the future. Beautiful things, wonderful, what might be kinds of conversations. What do we want to build together? What do we envision? And who's going to do some of the boots on the ground work to kind of pull the resources together? Oh, you've got this, you can contribute that, and you've got the land you'll share for these events, and you've got the trailer to haul the stuff around, and whatever, you've got the little printing business, and you can run the flyers off, and whatever it is that we're doing together. That's what community is. That's what this whole thing, we get this idea of exchange in our minds, and this economizing of everything into financial terms, and it just destroys the soft kind of bonding that we have in society. A couple of questions I have that I'm closing out with and wanting to process for a thought piece I'll write up about all this. What does it look like to imagine the world as it might be? And then how to work to make it true. That's the promptings that he left us with in this delivery. imagine the world as it might be. I love working in that space of like expansion, envisioning, going up into the clouds. What might be? What's the vision? What are we doing here? What might we could do here? How might these resources be activated in some cool way? You walk around, maybe it's like campus, like a university, and you walk around and there's buildings that are going underactivated, or just maybe totally unactivated, safe for occupancy and use, just not being used. Rooms going grossly underutilized. Okay, well, what kind of operation, entrepreneurial, whatever, could we get with students coming in here and activating the space? And community. What does it look like for students and community to come together and co-create something meaningful? Something that generates value for the local economy, local businesses and residents, and for the students. Value in maybe economic terms, value in educational and experiential terms. Building something, broadening our horizons of who we're comfortable working with. Opening ourselves up to new perspectives, ways of thinking about, approaching, and doing something. And that's the love, and that's the ragu sauce that really fills us up and carries us through life. Because that's what all this is out here. What are we doing? What are we building? How are we coming together to do that, to get there? What is there? Your planning department, wherever you live, your city, maybe even like within the city it's broken down. Your neighborhood might even have some kind of strategic plan. Your city does, if you're of any kind of decent size, to qualify as a city. I think that's determined at the state level, but you know, whatever. If you have a city, you have a plan. Pretty safe to say. Counties have development plans, and states kind of say, look, this is up to regional and county units of governance to come up with the development plans, strategic plans, 10-year, 20-year, whatever, 5-year, and plan for it and execute on it. There is a vision. Are you part of that? Are you aware of what that is? Does it jive with your vision and your neighbors? How are we coming together and determining where we're going? Most often these are planning experts coming up with those plans, consulting with the community, but it's usually the big heavy players politically and economically. Usually that's like intertwined. Money buys politics. Thank you, Citizens United. But it's not like it's just been true in the 2000s. It's been true. You know, you look at where the power of the money and the power and the political influence, and it's always something, an uphill battle as the people to organize against the interests of the wealthy. But on the local level, it's so much easier. Accessibility is the problem. And you'll have gatekeeping at the local level. When are these public hearings scheduled? Who can get to them? What does accessibility look like at the events themselves? Like, you might be able to get to the door, but can you get inside? Did they consider that? They probably just didn't think about it. If they thought about it, they probably dismissed it. Which is the sad part, or intentionally designed to limit access, which is the really, really sad part. May it not be true. It's usually those big players and the loudest voices in the room kind of getting heard and shifting the dial on things. How to imagine the world as it might be. We can still do this work though. Like, you know who loves a good story? Everyone loves a good story. So, if in our imagining, we are building narratives, even if they are just make-believe, and this is what I'm trying to work on, is this idea of, well, let's make and believe some of these stories about our future. What is the narrative of our community, of our neighborhood, of our street, of a building, and the immediate surroundings of it? What's the story of that place? What's the narrative? What has it been? And maybe is it asleep? It's asleep and is a seed that just needs to be watered, nurtured a little bit to sprout and come alive. What does that coming alive look like? What might that look like? And that's the invitation into the imagination, into the make-believe of the narrative placemaking of our communities. That's the whole inspiration, as I interpret it, from Margaret Chandra Carrison's book. My big takeaways: reimagined worlds, narrative placemaking for people, play, and purpose. A designer's manifesto. It's all about narrative storytelling, but interpreted through placemaking, as in the coming alive of some kind of physical place or physical interactive experience. When there's a narrative driving it, the influence and the impact of whatever that place is actually realized. It's come alive. And so much of our built environment, we sleep on the narrative for it. We just take for granted, like, oh yeah, people are gonna use this. And we build some just disgusting utilitarian piece of garbage architecture, just spit out blah, 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 all over the place. Boxes, man. Uninspired walls and total lack of character, and hope that character will come and fill it. That community will make up the difference. But when we start with a box, yeah, you can get inspired inside the box. But why are we doing these cookie cutter, like, shenanigan experiences when this is our lived reality day in and day out? And we're just building these uninspired strip malls everywhere, so everyone has the same boring lived reality. You or someone you know it, has a creative flair that really could play some big difference in the day-to-day interactions with some kind of boring building that you and people you care about deal with. They could have made that warehouse just come alive in some cool way. Maybe just color pop. We could start simple. Color pop. Maybe it's a mural. Maybe it's a cool shape to the roof or exterior that, like, just talks with the surrounding landscape, complements the mountain ranges. There's mountains or the rolling hills, or talks with the sky in some kind of, color and shape conversation. Materials, whatever. So that's part of the invitation. What I'm taking from this is the importance of civic education as something that is applied. It's not just about learning, oh, how do we inquire and how do we critique and what does that look like, but putting it into practice. Not just as students, not just as youths, not just in transition from one thing to another thing, but all lifelong. There's always invitations, and there is always responsibility on each of us to be civic agents, to take active stewardship. That might be redundant. Stewardship implies that you're active, otherwise you're not being a steward. But to take active stewardship of our streets, of our neighborhoods, of our communities, of our institutions, and to inquire into the story. What is the story being told here? What's the story that we want to tell? Who should be telling the story? Why? What should be honored here? And where are we trying to go? And does the infrastructure and the institution, the policies and the programs and whatever need to change in order to get us to that vision, that story? And probably the answer is yes. So much of our infrastructure is jacked and has a disgusting lack of heart. What does infrastructure with a heart look like? Whether it's physical infrastructure or systems that we have to interact with, or whatever. What does it look like when it honors our stories and helps us to lean into, to learn, to discover, to awaken to, and to move forward in the stories and in the directions and with the intentions, with the visions for the future that we have? What does it look like when our collective shared infrastructure calls those things to life? Critically, it starts within us. It's not on the outside. It's not, oh, we have to change this system so that it can call us to life in this way or support us in this way. Yeah, there are things that we have to change, 100%. But to get where I'm talking about, the real work is within each of us. As we become more soul aligned, more liberated from the paradigms that have been fed to us, that we've been taught that we're safe within, so long as we stay within the box. As we are more liberated, as our creative spirit is liberated to come alive, to be expressed through us. For me, that's a lot of writing. I do just a lot of writing. And the more free I feel in that, the easier it is then for me, beyond myself, to see things, dreams and visions to encourage in others, or to see ways that maybe this is getting in someone's way. It's a wall that if I have the power to just kind of say, well, this is an external wall that I have the influence to just kind of get rid of, to liberate them, even just a little bit. The vision, our vision, changes and improves on the outside as we do the internal work. It's challenging, it's unnerving, the internal work. It's like the scariest stuff that there is, facing our shadows, our darkness, our nightmares, what we're afraid of. Doesn't mean you get over the fear. But you do have to be willing to how does Baldwin put it? Uncomfortable. You do have to be willing to live in the disturbing truth, to hold that tension, both within, to hold the tension so that you can, in that tension, have a productive discovery and conversation with yourself on a way forward. And in the same way, then we learn in working with ourselves, how do we hold that tension with each other to accept the uncomfortable truths of the nightmares going on around us that we're either being impacted by or that we are impacting through our action or through our permitting the system to do what it does. And we first have to be willing to live in that disturbing truth, to wake up from the comfortable myths that knowingly or unknowingly we've accepted. How do we work to make it true? Well, what do you say? That's up to you. Let me know.